Hey guys, what's up? Back with some more Dark Souls Remastered for you. I've been playing with a lot more characters. I've got, I think, 3 or 4 characters total now that I've been invading with and experimenting with different builds. You won't see very much of that today. You'll see, I think, primarily 2 of my characters, both of whom at the moment are maining the Fury Sword, though I've been branching out a little bit, playing around with great swords, playing around a little bit with spears. stocks and rapiers, and then maybe even more so with katanas. And I just been learning that katanas and the Fury Sword and poke weapons are really the way to go in this game. In this first invasion here, you see obviously I'm chasing down a lone host who, by all appearances, is simply trying to buy time until they can get a summon sign so they can get their buddy into the world. One of the things obviously I find myself thinking quite a bit about what worked well for me in this game, what works well in Dark Souls 3, what works well in Dark Souls 1, and I've obviously had to calibrate my strategies appropriately. But one thing that is so awesome about this game compared to Dark Souls 3 is your ability to chase down hosts who are simply just trying to evade you. That is not a game you can play for very long. Now, they can hide behind a shield for quite a while, and that's a lot more difficult to punish. But somebody who just runs away, it's very easy to punish that. And you can see here, the Phantom that just got summoned in is actually the host from my previous invasion. In fact, both these guys are going to play starring roles in the next. I think I had about 10 invasions of them. I don't show nearly that many here. I think I show just a handful. But I got quite a few opportunities to invade these guys. I beat them most of the time. I think I won probably about 80%, but they did get me a couple times, especially this mage here. One of the things that I've been learning is, especially when you're fighting groups of people, the backstab system is invaluable. Now, unlike in Dark Souls 3, well, maybe to a certain extent in Dark Souls 3, when you backstab somebody in Dark Souls 1, you really open yourself up to getting counter backstabbed when you come out of your iframes. And it's something the better ganks know very well, and they will kind of gather around you and make it very difficult for you to escape unscathed. But if you don't rely on the backstab system, it's difficult to do enough damage or enough DPS in order to come out victorious in these invasions, because with multiple people in particular, they can punish your heals so easily, and yet multiple players can provide cover for one another so they can each individually go off and heal. And that was a difficult enough problem to manage in Dark Souls 3, but it's nearly impossible to manage in Dark Souls 1. And unfortunately, because of the password summoning mechanic, the balance of this game has shifted quite a bit. And in fact, probably my core complaint with the PvP is that invasions against solo hosts are probably too easy, whereas invasions against multiple people are almost too difficult. It's difficult to find a good balance. Watch what happens here, man. That rolling attack is such horseshit, and because the attack damage gets done on your opponent's window, or rather on their side of the network, not yours, in a high latency situation, you can have that sort of situation happen where I actually took the damage before he swung, and of course the host was very proud of his contributions to that invasion. But the sort of primacy of the backstab system, and here you can see me doing something I hadn't been doing until recently, which is more situationally swapping out my rings. The poise doesn't really matter that much against the mages, and so I'd rather have the hornet ring so I have a chance at one-shotting this guy with my chaos rapier. But I don't like playing for one shots. I don't like playing exclusively for criticals. I like criticals. I like incorporating them into my gameplay, but I don't want that to be the sole focus. But I feel like too often in Dark Souls 1, that's what ends up happening. And it's not just me. When I get invaded, nearly all the invaders immediately start trying to fish for backstabs. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. It's just, it gets a little tedious after a while. And if there's enough latency, you can get backstabbed in some ways that feel really unfair, even if you understand the backstab tech, and God help you if you don't understand it, because then it's got to seem like complete witchcraft. So I had a couple of pivots that I whiffed on these guys, but I already know from the previous invasion that this Phantom, I can one-shot him if I backstab him. Unfortunately, the host has been kind of hanging back a bit, because if they both got on me at the same time, it would be nearly impossible. And there, finally, I get a good pivot on the Phantom. I'm able to take him out of the equation. Also, as you can see, don't know the parry timings very well. I don't go for many parries. Like, I've probably gone for seriously fewer than 10 total in all the PvP I've done, just because I have so little confidence in my ability. But really the only way to learn is to just start whiffing them, and then eventually you'll learn the timing. I got really good at parrying the PvE in this game, especially like the Silver and Black Knights, but with the addition of latency, I just haven't learned to compensate for that quite yet. And here I sped this bit up because the host here is just backpedaling and shielding and rolling. I'm having a bit of trouble roll catching him. You'll notice that I use the Grass Crest shield most of the time, and I've actually started branching out and experimenting with other shields, though you won't see that in any of these clips, I don't think. But one thing I realized, and I didn't realize this until recently, so like Green Blossoms in Dark Souls 3, I saw a lot of people use those, and I used them from time to time. But really, at least if the stats that I've seen can be believed, the default stamina recovery rate in Dark Souls 3 is 45 stamina units per second, and the Green Blossom gives you, I think, an additional 5. And I'm not sure about the budding Green Blossoms, and there's so few of those that, unless you're save scumming them, you probably don't have many of those to begin with. But 5, an improvement of 5 on top of 45 is just a little over 10%, which is nothing really to write home about, and especially when you consider that stamina is regenerated so quickly. But in Dark Souls Remastered, in Dark Souls 1, I believe the Green Blossoms improve your stamina recovery rate by 93%. And 93% is enormous, and especially considering how slow it normally recovers, it made me realize that I really need to make sure that I'm using Green Blossoms, and I just narrowly escaped death there. But definitely throw on Green Blossoms. The Grass Crest shield, I believe, stacks with Green Blossoms in this game, and I forget if it's the Mask of the Mother. I think it's the Mask of the Mother that improves your stamina recovery rate. That also stacks, and you can actually get some incredibly good stamina recovery rates out of this game, almost like on par with Dark Souls 3, if you're using those items appropriately. So definitely make sure that you're using Green Blossoms in this game, even if you weren't previously in Dark Souls 3. So invading here is kind of funny. Everyone's got the same hat on because they can't see. Sometimes I feel like kind of a dick when I invade here, especially against lone hosts. But you can see here, just like I said, it's this constant backstab fishing. And again, I don't want to suggest that that's like the only way to play this game, because it isn't. And in fact, among better players, you don't see as many backstabs. The backstabs are there more as a threat, a way of kind of controlling their behavior. But most good players know how to avoid it. But even in duels among really good players, they still do get backstabs. And I think it has to do with kind of the rock, paper, scissors nature of the game. Like, you can't defend against everything all the time, especially because of the single confirmed backstab system. You're always going to open yourself up in some way. And I really had to kind of get comfortable with that, because I would sometimes get poised BS'd or roll backstabbed. And I always think, what could I have done differently? And sure, I could have done something differently to have prevented it, but then in all likelihood, I would have just opened myself up for some other form of punishment. So that's just part of the game, I guess, that you have to get used to. You're going to get stabbed in the back from time to time. So I would say from an invader's perspective, nearly every change in this game relative to Dark Souls 3 runs in your favor, in the invader's favor, the more experienced player's favor, with the sole exception of the password summoning mechanic that's been added. That definitely runs very counter to your interest. And you can see here, even just against 2 players, which to me would have been no big deal in Dark Souls 3, represents an enormous threat. Even against two very average players, it can be very difficult to eke out a win. And I actually don't showcase many of these either because I get obliterated too quickly, or there's really nothing all that interesting to watch. Now, when I play against multiple players like this, I always try to drag them into the PvE, and I always try to drag them into PvE, PvE that used ranged attacks, because you can kind of hide behind them and try to bait the other players in, and it can be a very effective strategy. So not just relying on PvE, but particular types with ranges. And so here I'm kind of trying to fight these guys around the corner, and the guy with the halberd's doing a pretty good job. He's blocking really consistently. He's being patient, just kind of waiting for his moment to get in there. And of course the caster coming around the corner, providing support helps. And you can see there I was trying to go for the run BS, but he was having none of it. And right there, literally the moment before I got stabbed in the back, I realized what was about to happen, and I snapped to lock on, but it was just a fraction of a second too late. So obviously I'm able to back into here to heal, and you can see this Phantom's been around the block because he was ready for me to do that, and he was ready to hit me with a Lloyd's. Having the guy with the halberd blocking so consistently, and then the guy with the caster behind him is a really difficult threat to deal with. Trying to deal with both these guys at the same time is really tough. And there, I read the heal, but I wasn't quite quick enough with Fire Tempest, or more accurately, I probably wasn't close enough with Fire Tempest. And so I kind of missed my opportunity there. And here I realized, like, I just can't continue to fight in this location, and I have an epiphany. And I'm able to get around the host and stab him in the back, which was pretty freaking awesome. I really enjoyed that. I felt really good about that. In fact, that was one of the first invasions where I felt like I'd really used the environment to my benefit. It just doesn't play nearly as big a role in Dark Souls Remastered as it does in 3. And here, this guy exposes a pretty weak link in my game, which is because I've been invading somewhere between usually like soul level 40 and 80, I don't run into a lot of WOG. So I really wasn't prepared to deal with it with this guy. And him switching off from the shield to the talisman was a really effective strategy. And you can see he did a ton of damage with it. I've gotten a lot better at dealing with people trying to run BS and poise BS me. I think the biggest key and adjustment's been slowing down and not being so quick to attack and letting them kind of develop and see what they're going to try to do to me. So this guy, I think he's AFK, so I'm trying to get his attention, and here I think I was going to go for some throwing knives, and he ends up catching me in my menu. But I mentioned in Dark Souls 3, it was difficult to punish certain behaviors. In Dark Souls 3, if somebody's parry spamming, or if somebody parries you, they're relying on a read of you and making a prediction and then getting repaid in the form of critical damage. But if I read you trying to read me, meaning if I anticipate your parry, I should be able to do a lot of damage to you. In fact, you could argue I should be able to do even more damage than you would have done with the parry. But in Dark Souls 3, those kinds of parry whiff punishes were unpredictable at best and very difficult to rely on. But in Dark Souls Remastered, man, if I know you're going to go for a parry, then it's a guaranteed backstab. Like, there is no question that I'm going to be able to get your back. And I really do like that. And it really tempers the parry spamming. And here you can see, again, I was backing off with the gank, backing off to the caster because the caster can do some real damage. And it ended up working out for me because the host had to run off and deal with him while I was able to Estus. And you can see another example of a guy trying to parry spam, and I'm just able to punish it. Just not a viable strat in this game, and I really, really do enjoy that after coming from Dark Souls 3. So this invasion was kind of funny because this had actually been going on for about 10 minutes, and I'd been trying to bait these guys up the ladder because I didn't really want to come down here with all the skeletons already dead. but I got bored and thought I would just come in here and try to fish out a backstab. And all it took was the host to whiff a single running R1 on that Ultra, and I was able to kill him. It's just not a very satisfying way for me to play. I don't know how you guys feel, but I just really don't enjoy that. But on the other hand, fights against skilled players can be a lot of fun. That's one of the reasons actually I've taken to invading here, because you intend to invade a lot of people that are themselves invading in the world. I'm not sure what happened in this invasion. I think there must have been a big latency problem of some kind, and you'll see here in just a moment what I'm talking about. But I had some really fun fights here against skilled invaders. In fact, you'll see one here in just a moment. Not this one. Yeah, no idea what just happened there. So this guy, I had so much fun with this invasion. So I realized this guy's got an empty hand, and here he's swinging with his empty hand to kind of show me. So I decide I'll play along, and I figure, I might get Hornet backstabbed and one shot as a result. But you know what? I don't really care. I'm just gonna kind of go along with it and see if I can have some fun. And here I go for the gesture, knowing full well that if he wants to, he can circle around and backstab me. And at first I thought I was going to get Hornet one shot, but then I realized he was going with the, I think it's like a broken straight sword. And here, so I see him gearing up, so I decide I'll back off and kind of let him get into his outfit. And it looks like he's probably got a mid-roll Murakumo build, which is very dangerous build. You don't see it too much. It looks like he's actually fast rolling. I've seen Nif's videos, and that weapon scares me, man. It is really dangerous. Another thing I haven't really talked about is weapon blocking, and you'll see I employ a lot of that. And I think it was Jinx Swashbuckler who originally turned me on to the power of that. But frankly, I think it's overpowered, and I think that when they toned it down in Dark Souls 3, that was a good thing, that it should have been toned down. But it is super, super powerful. I mean, it can withstand kicks after I've swung twice already. Like, it's too powerful. And actually, that same sort of power that goes with the weapon blocking applies tenfold to shields. Like, shields are really too overpowered in this game. I think the guard break riposte that they added in later versions was a good thing, and that was a masterfully executed pivot. I really didn't see that coming at all. It's funny, actually, a lot of times when I get backstabbed like that, I'll record the video even if there was nothing else particularly interesting in there. I went for it again. But I definitely recommend doing that, especially if you get backstabbed sometimes and you're like, how the hell did that happen? Like, he seems to just suddenly vanish and appear at your back. Watch the videos, watch them in slow motion, and you'll see that it's pretty clear what happens. And I did that with that fight, and I was able to see him running for my back. I still make that mistake, and there's another guy going for a pivot, but I still make that mistake of running and then trying to roll, and I end up doing that stupid jump. So this is another example of somebody trying to parry spam and just getting punished like crazy for it. And to be honest with you, I could see it and he just gives up. I could see an invader going for that parry spam technique in a kind of normal random invasion. But, when you invade here, there's a lot of duelists hanging out. And so I'd think, you wouldn't want to try something like that right out of the gate. And here you'll see a lot of rolling from me that seems like it's without purpose. But it's because I keep trying to buffer the running attacks like I would in Dark Souls 3. And of course you can't. The only way to really buffer it is if you're going straight at the opponent. But I could still make that mistake. Like the habits of Dark Souls 3 are so deeply ingrained that I just can't get rid of them. And there I probably should have done a rolling attack. It's another thing rolling attacks in this game are really powerful. And that was just a bad roll on my part. And the invader did a really nice job of punishing that. It was really nicely done. But this here, like this invasion, this is like a very typical one-on-one invasion against another player. You can see he's got the Zweihander, but he has no poise. And so I'm going to interrupt him at any point in his swing animation. I mean, like, so here I just kind of let him back off and heal. If you don't let solo hosts heal, it's just kind of, quite frankly, it just gets really boring. Like, at least if you let them heal, you can kind of screw around and work on techniques. Like here you can see I'm trying to work on roll backstabs against ultra great swords. Neptune Sequester actually had a really good video about those and talked about how roll backstabs in this game are a true punish, meaning that if you whiff an ultra swing, you are most likely going to get backstabbed, and there's really nothing you can do to prevent it. Like, it's a true punish for that. And lastly, one of my very favorite things about this game, I talked about this in my last video, people running for the boss fog. I so enjoy this feature where you can just pull them out of it. Like, it forces them to actually try to make space if they want to get through to the boss. Well, guys, thanks so much for checking in. I hope you guys enjoyed the invasions. Take care now.